of kids, we're talking, this is really Willard and King Junior High, and Longfellow. Ninth grade, 11% in the state. In Berkeley, 30% of ninth graders smoked marijuana in the past month. And we go up to 11th grade, 17% in the state, 46% in Berkeley. So there's a norm here that I want to talk about a little bit that does not come out of a vacuum, you know, and the norm helps to be created by us as an adult community. I want to throw in two other statistics that I think are interesting. Have you ever ridden in a car with anyone under the influence of alcohol or marijuana? 41% of 7th graders say they have. So who do you suppose, that's exactly who it is. I was going to say, who do you suppose really was driving the car for 7th grader? For the most part, it's the parents. And then last one, they were asked, is it easy or very easy? They want to know how easy is it to get alcohol or marijuana in Berkeley. And ninth graders say, 71% of ninth graders say it is easy or very easy to get marijuana or alcohol. And in 11th grade, 81% it is easy or very easy. I have a student of mine from Albany who doesn't have to talk at all, but she could vouch for what I'm saying, and this was years back. It's even more available today. It's very, so the point is that once your kids get into middle school and by the time they're in high school, and I don't really care whether they're, you know, going to Berkeley High or Maybeck or somewhere outside of here, they're swimming in a milieu where it is easier for them to get marijuana than it is for you guys, unless you have a cannabis card. And there's a message out there that is pretty strong, that's very positive for marijuana, and that I think that probably by the end of November of this year, marijuana is going to be legalized in the state of California. So that's the. I think he's right. We'll see. We'll see, but I don't want to say optimistic or pessimistic. My issue though is, and I want to make a distinction here, it is different for an adult than it is for a child. Just like it is not hypocritical for you to be having a glass of wine and to be able to tell your child who is 16 years old or 17 years old, not now, to wait. There's nothing hypocritical about that at all, and that's part of the message that I want to be able to get across tonight through research and through what's going on in a brain. So with that said, a couple of things I want to talk about here. This is, you know what, let's leave the lights on though, because I'm going to do a little drawing here as well. But if you can see it, this is an adolescent brain, this is an adult brain, and what they did was they gave a whole bunch of adolescents and a whole bunch of adults kind of problem-solving activities to do, some emotional experiences that they had, some intellectual experiences, and what they did was they took MRIs. And what this is a conglomeration of MRIs for adolescents and the conglomeration of MRIs for adults. And what you see is that the adolescent brain is much deeper, the activity is much deeper than where it is for an adult brain. And when I say an adult brain, I'm talking really above 24 years old, 24 and above. It's here. And basically, this is what's called the prefrontal cortex. That's the area in the brain where you're really saying, you know something, if I do this, this could be the result. Let's plan this thing out. Let's see. If this is also the place where the brakes are. Maybe one is okay, but you know something? This is the place where thinking takes place. This is more of an emotional and more of an impulsive place. And slowly, over time, the brain biologically moves from here up to here. We used to think years ago that teenagers, for the most part, had a brain very similar to adults. It's just that they didn't have a lot of experience. But it turns out now that biologically, the brain is working differently as an adolescent than it is as an adult. And interestingly enough, when I say 24, that happens to be the age when you can rent a car. And the insurance companies really understand. They want to be able to rent the car to somebody that is totally up in this part of the brain where they're really thinking. Okay. So there's a way in which you can trust your children, but understand that biologically they're not in this place. And as these kids are getting older, and you can say, well, what were you thinking? You know, I hope that you don't have the expectation that they're just working for this place, because they are not in this place yet. It is the responsibility of parents to be the prefrontal cortex for their kids. To sit down with your child and begin to talk some of these things out. And begin to talk about cause and effect and planning and thinking about things. That's the adult responsibility. That's what we need to do with our youth in this community, is be the prefrontal cortex for the kids, rather than expect them to be there. I want to talk just a little bit about, the other thing I want to talk about around an adolescent brain, or around a developing brain. And when I talk about this, what I'm talking about is a brain that begins to happen again in the brain. It happens when they're around 2, but it again begins to happen around 11 or 12. And there's 2 things that take place here. I'm going to just so you kind of focus here. One of them is, well, let's put it like this. When a child gets to be about 11 or 12, and parents are taking them to church and stuff, well, somewhere around that time, they might say at around 11, 12 years old, you know something? I don't think I believe in God. Or, you know something? I think I do believe in God. You know, or I think that I'm more of a Republican than a Democrat. You know, or God forbid, you know. But they're going to be taking on their own identity. Some will begin to recognize, I think I'm more, and you may see it already, but that's when they begin to own it. I think I'm more interested in mechanics, or I think I'm more interested in drawing, or I think I'm more interested in people. And they may not think this out entirely, but they have interests that they start to focus in on. We see it as they're really starting to become their own person. They're really starting to get their own identity. What's happening in the brain is 2 things. One thing is that the stuff that they are not really focusing on, and I'll give you an example. For me, growing up in the Bronx, my parents wanted me to play piano. And I had good hands and did pretty good at it, but I also really liked basketball and stickball, which was in the schoolyard across the street, okay? And so instead of practicing the piano, I really spent time practicing my jump shot, you know, or practicing how to hit a ball. Well, I got very good at a jump shot and how to hit a ball, and I did not get very good at the piano. I didn't really develop those skills. What happens is, in the brain, things that they work on, those neural connections that they're making as they're doing these things and focusing in on drawing or math or whatever it is, and that really has their attention, those things, those neural connections, there's something called myelin, which is like insulation on a wire. And it starts to grow around those neural connections. And as it does that, it makes those neural connections act much more efficiently, just like insulation on a wire, okay? And things that they don't work on very much begin to get pruned away, like you would prune away a tree. Those neural connections don't necessarily get made. So the 2 things that are going on in the developing brain that don't go on as much in an adult brain and start around 11 and 12 are what's called myelination, which is that things are starting to get hardwired in, and they're really learning that and getting very efficient at it. And at the same time, things that they're not working on as much begin to get pruned away. That's part of what's happening in the developmental brain, okay? So the 2 things that I want to say that the child is going through is, number 1, slowly getting up here, but taking a long time to get to that prefrontal cortex. And number 2, pruning and myelination. The stuff that they use